I was working on this video for about a month. It was supposed to be one quick return to talking about Riot's MMO one last time, because people really wanted me to talk about mounts for some reason. So I caved in and I thought,
okay,
sure, we haven't talked about the MMO for quite some time. What harm would there be in hopping back in for some quick fun? Well, here we go again. I was pretty sure I was done talking about Riot's MMO for some time. We covered the already existing base world. We talked about the kinds of characters we can find there. We talked about the already established villains and bosses. We talked about the legendary weapons forged by the gods of this universe. We even talked about the fact that League gave them some amazing data for fair monetization. And still, people want me to talk about the still unannounced Riot MMO. Specifically, from the day I released my first video on Riot's MMO, people really wanted me to talk about mounts. Which is perhaps the worst topic to talk about. At least when we talked about items, there is the 90% chance you are gonna have fantasy weapons in a fantasy MMO. When it comes to mounts, those are bound to gameplay, about which we know nothing. We don't even know if riding mounts is gonna be part of the game. And still, people really want...
Hopefully it will, because if mounts are part of the game, it's gonna make traveling into the game so much just more fun, so much just more relaxing, and to have to like run everywhere. Like for example with New World. Like New World is an absolute amazing MMO, don't get me wrong. But not having mounts in New World and you have to run to 99% of the time to the places you want to be at is just so frustrating. Like bringing in mounts to the game is just going to make the game so much more fun. Like even Diablo brought in mounts to the new Diablo 4 that was released. Like even they decided, you know what, let's bring in some mounts to the game and make the game a little bit more relaxing, you know?
Wanted me to talk about it. And in the end, it all changed when Riot revealed a new Legends of Runeterra card. A dog. That is very specifically a mount in this universe. So of course people went crazy and here we are. Thankfully, just like with every other topic I covered, the things I show you today are all already part of the universe. I am not going to show you anything made up. I am only going to show you things that are confirmed to be part of this world. And it is only going to be up to Riot to decide whether they want to put it in their game. So now, because people really went crazy over this topic for some reason, without further ado, let's talk about all the possible mounts that may appear in Riot's MMO.
This is gonna be exciting.
Just like their weapons and armor change from region to region, so does the fauna and flora, which also means the mounts of this universe. Every nation is riding different things into battle, from horses to basilisks to tanks. So before we get too crazy, let's start with the normie, albeit a bit racist, Demacia. By now you may know that Demacians like one thing: defense. It doesn't matter if it's against magic or a blade. Big chunky armor is kind of part of their persona. And of course their mounts reflect that. Of course every fantasy needs horses, so Demacia has their cavalry, which usually means horses stacked with armor. Especially when it comes to the Dauntless Vanguard, these horses look amazing. And this is probably gonna be the staple mount of this region. However, Demacians also have a unique mount of their own: the raptors. The Silverwing Raptors mostly come from the mountains bordering the Frailyard in the north. And so far we have seen 3 variants in the Demacian military. There is the unarmored Silverwing Lancer. This is perhaps the most common version of these. Then there is the armored Silverwing Vanguard, but the coolest of them all is the elite Silverwing Flight. This is the most prestigious version of this mount you can get in this universe. Now of course, in the forests, Demacians also have the Great Horn Stags. These are mostly mounted by the scouts, who sometimes also use the Elkin, which is just a smaller version of them. And these are used by the scouts and the monster hunters. Of course, we can also mention the Badger Bears. We haven't seen anyone use one of these giant things as mounts, but come on. We can also mention the fact that Demacians craft their own petricite constructs. These are essentially machines powered up by absorbed magic. And
That
they
would
come
be
in many
actually
different
so
shapes and
dope,
sizes,
though.
from badgers to owl beasts to raptors. So I wouldn't be surprised if a petricide construct became a mount at some point.
Yo, that would
Of
actually be
course,
so
we can
dope,
also
though, not
mention
gonna lie.
dragons. In the south, Demacia has the Dragon Guard, who are actively researching the local dragons. Which means there is a chance Demacians may end up taming some of the dragons. And lastly, there is the trusty Ram Hound. This is not just a dog, this is a mount. And here it is specifically ridden by Cytherea of Cloudfield. And you bet if this game has mounts, there is no way Riot is passing on this one.
No, 100%.
But that's pretty much all the iconic things we can find in Demacia, so now let's move on to Noxus. Noxians mostly march into battles on their own to bolster their legions. However, we can mention that if you check out the Piltover trade map, you may find a place where Noxians are breeding a special kind of horses. These are the light Vindoran horses, and their lightweight makes them special because they can be used to traverse the deserts. Of course, this is a bit of foreshadowing because Noxus is actively trying to invade Sharima. Anyway, besides horses, the most common beast of Noxus are the basilisks.
Yeah.
These are used for riding as well as
that
any
looks
hard
so
work.
nice, though.
Of course, here you can see the unarmored version, but we also have the slightly more elite armored versions of the basilisks. But we also have the epic undead variants resurrected with blood magic. And even these are not the only armored beasts that Noxus is using. We also have armored mammoths. Of course, mammoths usually come from the Frailyard, so
Yo,
it makes
imagine-
sense why Noxus would have that.
Imagine getting a mammoth in the game and just absolutely like just running around with a full armored mammoth. Like, I think that would look absolutely fucking amazing.
They are expanding their territory everywhere, including the Frailyard. Sometimes they also ride these. These creatures don't really have an official name. A variant of these are called the Draclops, but not
Okay.
all of them fall under the same umbrella. Many people call them different things. For example, this one is Lady Henrietta Eliza Vespasian IV of Oronthis. Most people just call them lizards. They are
Yeah.
badass, mostly immortal, and yes, the Yordle Kled is riding a variant
Yes.
of this.
Okay.
Of course, we can also mention that Noxians do have captured snappers.
Yo,
These
that
creatures
is
come from
so
Ionia, so we'll talk about them a little bit later. And when it comes to other forms of traveling,
I think that would be actually awesome. Like, getting a mount in Noxus that is not from Noxus due to they enslave the creatures, enslave the people, and like then you will be able to get like mounts that you will be able to get there that you can get in other regions as well. But like, let's say during a quest, you will be able to unlock the mount in Noxus and it gets like some special sort of armor or maybe even a die that represent Noxus instead of the original place where the mount comes from, you know?
Noxians have ships. I don't think the players will be able to get these. So from here, let's go into Sharima. If we get to see
Sharima.
horses here, it will most likely be the Noxian breed. But thankfully, this region also has some very cool mounts besides just horses. The most common one are the Skalashi. These massive beasts
Oh,
of burden
damn.
are the simplest way to cross the deserts.
That
And there is also a smaller version of these called the Ekasul goats. The one that will likely not be obtainable by the players, but one that might be a really cool quest hub are the Dorman. These gigantic beasts essentially serve as moving cities, and a lot
Oh,
of nomads live on these. The desert also has its own unique kind of rideable lions. These are
Of
mostly
course.
used by the golden armies of the capital. There is also a tribe worshipping Renekton that rides the lizards known as sand threshers. They can be
Sand
tiny or massive, or they can have multiple heads. And some even found out
This looks actually so nice. Imagine riding an alligator with 3 heads, eh? Like, that's never seen before. Like, that would be actually so freaking amazing.
how to tame their froggy relatives. There are also the rock bears, but I doubt we will be able to ride them.
Yeah.
These hate to be disturbed. The same goes for the void corrupted beings. I doubt we will be able to safely ride a
That looks
Voidborn.
also
Although
so
that
amazing,
would be a
though.
badass reward for some kind of a challenge. And lastly, they also have their own camels. I can already imagine the smell. Wait, what is that smell? I don't think it's the beast. I think it's the person riding it. Specifically, after so many hours of riding it, it's their groin! This video is brought to you by Manscaped. Are you excited for mount farming, but your dungeon grinding creates a foul odor where the sun don't shine? Be honest with me, you're an MMO player after all. Well, when it comes to good hygiene, Manscaped got you covered. With their latest performance package 4.0, you too can tame the mounts in the bushes. Any MOBA player would know that a misplaced bush is a recipe for a disaster. The buildup of sweat and bacteria can lead up to swampy feelings. Not to mention that the bush itself is hiding your precious mount, which is where the Lawnmower 4.0 comes into play. This trimmer was designed to deal with unruly bushes while helping prevent nicks and cuts, so that your mount comes out unscathed. It is also waterproof and cordless, so you can even use it to tame underwater mounts. And its LED light makes it usable even in the darkest dungeons. The performance package also includes 2 products to help with scaring your party members away: the Crop Preserver Ball Deodorant and the Crop Reviver Ball Toner Spray. After hours of mount farming, one could use an on-the-spot refresher. The Crop Preserver Ball Deodorant helps you feel fresh and ready for another mount run, while the Crop Reviver functions as a lifeline for the last few runs of the night. Whenever you don't have the time to shower, the Crop Reviver is the perfect solution. 2 quick spritz down below is just enough to please the RNG gods. Can you smell it now? Can you smell the fresh mount drop coming through your nostrils? No, you can't! Which is where the Weed Whacker nose and ear hair trimmer comes into play. It's just the right tool to clear the pathway to a successful run. For a limited time, if you purchase the performance package at manscape.com, you will get 2 free gifts. The Shed Travel Bag, guaranteed to increase your inventory slots, and the Manscaped Anti-Chafing Boxer Briefs. This epic quality item increases your charisma, with a gamer growing passive ability that keeps your high-friction areas cool. So what are you waiting for? Get 20% off plus free shipping when you use my code Necrit at manscaped.com. Use the link in the description and start your mount farming journey today with manscaped.com. The ad is now over. So now, let's move on to the Frailyard. Of course, in the north, horses would freeze. So instead, the Wintersclaw tribe decided to ride the Druvask boars. These come in all shapes and sizes. Some can be pale and others can be dark. Some can be massive and others can be smaller. Regardless, these are some of the more popular mounts here. We then have the Elnugs, who act as the cattle of this region. Many people herd them for food, but they can also ride on them. The Scarthane also rides this beast. It was never really explained what this one is. But I know one thing for sure. It looks cool. And in some rare cases, you can also ride the wolves, because they are massive in this region. Of course, there are also the mentioned mammoths, but anything else would freeze here. So now, let's move on to Ionia. Ionia is all about people being one with the nature. So really, Riot can turn any of the crazy beasts here into mounts. From the Windfarers to the Jeweled Protectors to the Scaled Snappers, which sometimes get kidnapped by the Noxians for entertainment. Truth be told, Ionians rarely ever use mounts because they don't really wanna bother Mother Nature. And when they do, they go all out. I'm not sure if Riot can actually pull this one off. Targon is a massive mountain. Everything is vertical. You don't have too many options for mounts here. There are 3 native animals that are somewhat used by the locals. The Ibik, the Tamu, and the Bolor. These could be potentially used as mounts. We also have the Targonian wingless dragons. A smaller variant of these could be used as potential mounts. The same also goes for the Stellarcorns. This is the closest you can get to unicorns in this universe. And lastly, there are also the Ibex goats. Sometimes
I like this though. I like this a lot. Like, it is the normal animal shape with the 4 legs and the tail and whatsoever, but his horns are like enchanted. Like, this looks actually so sick though. Like, I don't know if it's just like enchanted armor, if you can say it like that, or if it is actually part of the animal. but it looks so nice.
Goats are actually used to traverse the mountain. Because,
Okay, no, it
well,
is actually
goats
part of.
are
Oh,
actually
damn.
good at that. But besides them, Targon doesn't really have too many mounts. So now let's move on to Buildwater. Buildwater is in a similar boat. Except instead of climbing mountains, everyone here is using ships and boats. And still, there is one new rideable thing here. That thing!
That
It's a
thing.
seahorse. Get it? No, seriously, I don't think we ever got a name for this beast. But it is obviously a mount. Besides this, there are also the shark-ish creatures that could be used as mounts. And there are also the weavers, which look really creepy if I may be honest. But that's really it for Buildwater. Unless you wanna ride a gullfish or a waft rat, you don't really have too many options here. In Piltover and Zone, however, we get a different story. Using a combination of magic and engineering, the people here get to ride in style. If we ignore the fact that sometimes they get to make giant mechs or even working submarines, as well as high-tech airships, they also have the classic motorcycles. Some of these are used by the wardens, but they do also have more casual variants. One of these is even owned by Seraphine. The Pharaoh's family also creates legitimate cars. But in my opinion, the coolest mount we might be able to get here is the one that was shown in one of Arcane's trailers, even though it wasn't really featured in the show itself. And that's the Disc Runner. The first time we got in contact with this one was actually in Jinx's story. She basically crashed a party, blew everything up for fun, stole one of these Disc Runners and fled. This might actually be the most iconic mount from Piltover. But it will definitely not be the coolest mount. That title goes to the hoverboards, which were even featured in one of the Piltover cinematics. But that's really it for mechs, so now let's move on to the Shadow Isles. Before people start freaking out about riding centaurs, these are just people. When the ruination happened, the soldiers of the Iron Order got fused with their horses. I don't think they would appreciate you riding on them.
No.
Anyway, most of the things on the Shadow Isles are monsters. There is not much you can just commonly find here. But you know, we could fancy riding the Shark Chariot. I don't think this one would really work, but it exists. But then we actually have two beasts of shadow that would actually work. There is the Doom Beast, which is a combination of a cat and Cthulhu, but better yet, the Dusk Rider. A six-legged nightmare of two horses and a bat. If we get anything from the Shadow Isles, it better be this one. And lastly, we can't really talk about Ishtal. Ishtal is a small region where everyone is using elemental magic to travel around. Also, we simply don't know too much about this region. So instead, how about we talk about Bandle City, the magical realm of the Yordles. They are tiny, so surely they can ride anything, right?
Yep.
Well, it just so happens to be that the favorite mount of the Yordles are mechs. They have a mech mount based on every region. Frailyardian Rambots, Piltovan mechs, Targonian mech forcers, Demacian war machines, and even Ionian shadow tech walkers. They have it all. But never forget that all of these are based on Riot's legendary board game. Mechs vs Minions, which foreshadowed 4 mounts.
Damn, okay.
Alright, here we go. Let's watch it.